Zach, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful that you made the time. How are you doing?
Good. A little tired. A couple workouts today, but other than that, life is good.
So I asked you to talk to me because I was so thrilled to see you putting out these statements and videos, speaking out against anti-Semitism. I'm Jewish, obviously very involved in the sports world, and seeing that from you meant a lot. And I wondered if you could sort of tell me what your impulse was. You were the first NFL player, I think, to sort of step up. So I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think and I'm honored, and it's a blessing that people identify me as in terms of somebody who stood up for the what I consider right and what is right. Kind of want to just make sure people know it wasn't really so much about being first. I think it was just perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the honesty of the situation I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw just something simple, run to the refrigerator, get something to drink real quick, try to go to sleep, right? Just like anybody else. And I looked at my phone and I saw Deshaun's apology video, and I was just wondering what is this about?
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked it up and I saw the articles, and I was frustrated. I was just really, really frustrated. It bugged me a lot, as you can see in terms of my emotions that day. But just once again, it was just to say just to use my platform. I think that's the correct terminology I should use. I just wanted to say something we need to stop doing this. Basically, this isn't right at all.
Yeah. I mean, it was very moving for me because I think, I firmly believe that you can't be against anti-Semitism without being against racism, and it should be a rising tide rather than, who's had it worse. And when you said that and you were getting emotional, I was getting emotional because it so spoke to that. And you talked about going to USC being sort of eye-opening for you. And I wondered, are there any specific personal relationships in your life, or was there sort of a turning point where you started paying more attention to anti-Semitism, or something? What hit you so hard about that?
Well, just to give you a little bit of background knowledge, my freshman spring semester, I actually pledged Zeta Beta Tau, which is a national Jewish fraternity. They did approach me in the sense of saying hey, during the fall, I want to tell this story, but also show growth, okay, and show how a young kid from Tacoma, Washington, on the West Coast went down to Los Angeles and met some of the most beautiful people on inside and out, when it comes in terms of the Jewish community and Jews themselves. And it just it's just crazy when I look back. Jake Kelfer is his name, Jake Kelfer, and he's actually later on down the story after I do get initiated. He is my big brother, right, in the fraternity.
Okay.
And he's my big brother, but I'm 6'9" and he's easily 5'3", which is the fun. But he approaches me during the fall, just eating lunch in campus center, and he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Banner, you're doing really well here, and because I was playing both football and basketball at USC, and he was talking about we got to play some hoops sometimes. Hey, what do you think about pledging?" And I said, "Oh man, I didn't end up going to any of the southern schools and any schools down south, which Black fraternities are definitely more prominent. And I grew up watching you can name all the movies, but I always dreamed about man, what if I was in a frat?" So I told him that. I was like, "Yeah, but isn't ZBT, I said this word for word. I said, isn't ZBT a white fraternity?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, nationally we're Jewish, but we like to take the approach here at the USC campus that, multicultural." And that's exactly what it was. I wasn't the only Black guy in there. We had a couple Asian guys. We had one of Muslim descent. It really was. But they also did have a huge group of Jewish people in it, and Jewish
Mm-hmm.
guys. And so once that's one sign of growth, right? So then I learned from that. So then I'm asking questions. I'm the kind of guy, like, if we have a conversation, if we meet, right, and we sit down, you're more than likely going to ask me, hey, how's football going?
Right.
Like, I just, like, it's like, I don't want that to be the sense of the conversation. Does that make sense? So
Totally.
I'm more questions about you and your background and things like that. So after a while, after that many games of FIFA and stuff, we start digging into like background and like
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? The friend stuff. And as much as they were intrigued, because remember, it costs about $60,000 to $70,000 a year to go to USC.
Right.
Not everybody who goes to USC is rich. I want to make that loud and clear.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these guys came from a lot wealthier backgrounds than I did. And
Totally.
they found out some of the things that, I had to deal with growing up, not only with racial issues, but also, gang violence and stuff like that and around my family. And they just ask questions because it's like, hey, like they're trying to educate themselves. So vice versa, I'm educating myself about the Jewish community. And to get to my point, it's just like when my mother, she started off as a social studies and English teacher and worked her way up, assistant principal. Now she's a high school, middle school, or not a high school. That doesn't make sense. She is a middle school principal. I apologize about that. She made a huge deal about like just educating myself on people's history, and
Mm-hmm.
especially the tough stuff at a very young age. So I already knew about, World War II and the Holocaust and everything like that,
Yeah.
not only from a general stance, but also some in-depth reading. Um, you don't get that feeling though until you actually hear it from a Jewish person, and I really mean that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear that. You don't hear that pain. You don't get to read that out of a book, and that's a reflection of how crappy our education system is. But that's for another interview. Does that make sense? And it's
Yes, absolutely.
um, we just can't do that. Like, for example, too, and I want to point out a flaw because this is kind of a mistake on my end. But when I was reading those articles after reading or listening to Deshaun's apology and reading the articles, I had no idea what anti-Semitic meant. I really,
Really?
and it's just because I just didn't think that way.
Yeah.
I had to Google. Does that make sense? I had to Google
Yep.
it, and I was like, because I was like, what did he say? Like, right in after his anti-Semitic comments, I was like,
Right.
what does that even mean? And I was like, no way. And that's kind of what built up the feelings towards it, just because like I have friends, and remember what I said, I have friends who I call family,
Mm-hmm.
and those are my brothers. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. I mean, I think that that's a really great point, is not everyone is even familiar with what anti-Semitism is or what it's like to move through the world having to deal with it. Because I mean, even when you look at different forms of oppression, you can still have different forms of privilege, right? Like I'm white. I also don't have a last name that sounds Jewish. So for me, it's been a very easy road in terms of not having to deal with that kind of blatant oppression, even though, like half of my grandfather's family was, killed in the Holocaust. And so it can be sort of this simmering thing. And so for you to have been immersed in a community like that, is that's where the growth comes from.
Exactly.
Um,
You
but
hit
yeah.
it. I mean, that's the quote of the day here. Close the interview. We're done. Here we go.
No. Please stick around. I need you. But yeah, I mean, what has the reaction been? I've seen a bunch of people retweeting you, and I've also seen that you've gotten invited to a lot of Shabbat dinners and like asked out on dates. And that, to me, I would love to hear.
Hold on, wait a minute. Like,
I saw your tweets. Zach.
I like to have fun with it. But I'm serious. I'll be at some Shabbat dinners. I'm at the date, not the dates. Don't do that.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm single, so there is no reason why. I'm just saying, we're COVID-19. We're trying to social distance
I'm
ourselves.
just saying, Zach, any app is a dating app if you try hard enough.
I hear you. Tell your friends I said hi, Charlotte. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. It's definitely, it's honoring. Like, I feel honored. Does that make sense? And it's cool. It sucks that we have to go through this point of people to get hurt to get this close.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, like, and I've been preaching this message in the last couple of days, since this last weekend when we got away from some of the serious points that I was trying to make. if it took one NFL player to piss off an entire community, I understand the Schwartz brothers. I understand Julian Edelman,
Mm-hmm.
but they themselves come from Jewish descent. So it doesn't really hit the same. Let another NFL player just brighten your day and tell you guys don't worry about it and keep moving on and keep pushing and keep taking care of the issues that you have already. If that makes sense. And I don't want to ignore like my message. Like we can't say those type of things. But once again, like there's a whole bunch of people that are, I think that they're just probably just catching up on the news, and I'm okay with that. But and I'm okay to like respond to those and say, hey, here, you need another hug. Like I got you. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, like on your guys' end, there was already stuff that you guys were talking about before this issue. There was already stuff amongst you guys worldwide that you're trying to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
This should be put at the end of that, is all I'm saying, that list. And then for me personally, there is this thing that we were originally pushing, and I still stand by, and I will continue to fight for, is the Black Lives Matter.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's just that's real personal for me, right? And it's just to open up a little bit, Charlotte, it kind of sucks. This is the first time I'm on video about this. It really sucks on how sometimes people think I've turned my back on my own, which is crazy. It's hypocritical. Little bit of a backlash that I've been getting recently. I really don't care, because it's one of those things where we need to try to uplift each other and equal it out.
Yeah.
There are oppressed people. There are people who the police are scared of, naturally, are afraid of. A policeman is natural. As a 6'9" black man, I have always had this temperament and way I hold myself to try to seem as least of a threat as possible.
Yeah.
And there's George Floyd, you know, who was slaughtered.
Yeah.
Manuel Ellis back home, you may not be may not know about that story. Educate yourself back home in my area in Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah.
People are fighting for. And it's out here, Antoine, who was shot in his back, like as a kid by a police officer. There's these underlying issues that we have to keep pushing for. But like, the Jewish community should have never been brought into this in the first place. And to hear and to see the response of, and I can tell it's a you guys thing. Like first of all, how important the number 18 is to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
$60,000 was donated. Over $60,000 was donated to my team and my foundation this last weekend in response for sticking up for you guys in increments of 18. Sometimes people, and you know what I'm saying? And so there was a couple $100 here or there, but that just shows you in numbers. Thank you for this. Thank you for having our back.
Yeah.
Now we will have yours. With that, I'm going to be honest, just now that we're on camera and you can see, right, the actual thing. With that, that's why I wanted to put that. Let's keep the same energy, like in supporting not only me and myself and what my mission is with my foundation, but the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And also, like, it also points out the hypocrites on my side in terms of my people. That's the most money I've ever made going into my 4th year in the National Football League.
Wow.
So why is it coming from someone else? And that anger and that passion is there, but I don't want to move forward in hate. I want to reiterate that. And it's so much easier to put out that message on this because you can see my face, right? You can't really do that on radio because people hear that and they'll be like, whoa, I thought you said love. I thought you said peace and equality and these type of things. But it did. I was just like, man, like, why? And moving forward, those are the kind of conversations that I'm going to have with people back home and ask for it. You know what I mean? And ask for the same love.
Absolutely. I mean, I think something that's upsetting on both sides is I've seen white Jewish people who had been completely silent on Black Lives Matter, hadn't said anything. The minute something personally affects them, they're standing up saying, well, like anti-Semitism is bad, we got to fight for it. And I'm like, you don't get to pick and choose. Like, you can't have been silent for a month in light of these national protests for an extremely real pressing issue and then hop in when you feel affected. And I think part of the reason that you're standing up meant so much is because you have been so vocal, and you're out there saying like, hey, we can fight for one thing, but we also, it doesn't mean you can't fight for another, and that message is crucial, because I think that it's so important for people to hear, hey, this doesn't have to be either like we're fighting for ourselves or you're fighting for yourselves. Like that's what the systems of oppression would like oppressed people to do, is fight among each other instead of but yeah,
So
I mean,
after that, I mean, that was another powerful. Look at you, just with the
no.
it's the
You're
truth.
very good.
It's the truth, and it's one of those things where, like, how do we move forward and how do we move on? And the issue at hand has nothing to do with who's left and who's right.
Yeah.
I made that comment in one of my videos because that just seems like, I understand that there are horrible people who have used the Black Lives Matter movement in the past to profit.
Mm-hmm.
That's bullcrap. It is.
Yeah.
That it is. It's just it's one of, as I grow up as a 26-year-old man and do my own research and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
I see that and I hear it, and it's true fact that people have.
Yeah.
But when I say it, I'm telling you, as a man whose cousin was incarcerated when I was around 6th grade and hasn't seen me play football. And sometimes my inspiration to keep playing is so he gets out in about a year and a half or some change. Like, some of my inspiration is still to keep playing so he can actually come to a game. And I appreciate that. But like, it's real. I've lost friends growing up to gun violence.
Yeah.
I've lost friends growing up to police brutality. And it's I've been desensitized my entire life to it. And I shouldn't feel uncomfortable as a man that probably makes more money than a lot of people. When I get pulled over by a police officer, I'm scared.
Right.
I shouldn't, right? You think that, right? And I didn't mean to flex my pockets, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah. That this kind of racism is it indiscriminate. It's what you face.
I've been pulled over probably 6 to 7 times. Remind you, my first time when I was six years old, or not 6 years old. I wasn't driving when I was 6. I'm sorry, 16.
Like, wow.
Let's laugh, right? Yeah, laugh. I probably looked like a 16-year-old when I was 6, but I was speeding, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really was. I think I was going 45 and a 35 or something like that, or maybe 50 in a 35. But just the emotion is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Like
the fear inside of me, trembling. And then now over the years, we've been trained. We've had cops brought by the team in the past to explain to us, like, most of you guys have tinted windows. Roll all your windows down. Put your license, registration, and insurance on the dashboard, and keep your hands above the steering wheel. Just to take those dramatic steps to try to stay alive for that situation. And that's why it's somewhat like super disappointing when you see actual like pocket cams of cops of people who don't deserve to die at that moment. Right. And now, don't get me wrong, police officers do have a hard task. They really do in terms of the protect and serve. I understand that there are dangerous people out there. Mm-hmm. But there's literally, there are videotapes, and we don't need to talk about it. But then there are also videotapes of other races and other social backgrounds just blurting off, hands moving all over the place, reaching for their purse to show them that it's just dramatically fast hands reach down to the passenger seat to grab the purse. I'll show you right here. But if I do that as a black man, you're thinking I'm pulling a gun.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So what do we have to do? We can no longer talk about what's right and what's wrong because people don't get it. We have to go for, and that's why they use the word systemic change.
Yeah.
We have to go for the background. We have to go for the legislation. We have to go for those type of things. And that, unfortunately, that stuff takes time.
Yeah.
Because still arguments between people who's left and who's right instead of what's right and what's wrong.
I mean, it's absurd that, you know, I was pulled over when I was 16. I was going way too fast. There's not a single part of me feared for my life. You know, like that's just, it's deeply unfair. It is systemic. And what are you doing specifically? You know, you talk about moving forward. I'm interested in sort of what you've got up your sleeve.
So I personally have my own foundation, the B3 Foundation. We focus on, I mean, the motto is, and the mission statement is, in short, is bringing together, building together, and better together. Those are the three B's. And then the other part about the three is there's 3 locations. My hometown, Tacoma, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
The island of Guam, where my mom is from. I'm the first of Chamorro descent to be drafted to the NFL. And to also throw, I throw an annual camp out there in Guam. I was the first one to throw a football camp out there for the children and for the kids. And we do a yearly trip for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and just love up on them and help them. Also backpack drives for not only that location, but for all 3 locations, and also Los Angeles because of USC. Me living out there for not only the 4.5 years out there, but also a little bit after.
Mm-hmm.
Just focusing on community development and other things within that. So it's our mission statement is very, very simple. I am trying to show that those kids, that they have the same opportunity as I do, no matter what anybody tells them, no matter what's trying to hold them back. How do we do that? We have a mentorship program back home in Tacoma, Washington, where we are mentoring high school kids to put them in the lives of other younger kids, and that way it's a, what did Jackie Moon say? ELE, everybody love everybody, right? So it's one of those type of things, and you can check out b3foundation.com. That's the URL, and then also my link is in both my Twitter and my Instagram bio. But in terms of how we move forward, very, very shocking. I usually came out of pocket a lot just because of, it was. Don't get me wrong. This year, and I want to make sure this is known. This year, when we went to Guam, Guam had showed so much love, and we actually had an opportunity to raise between $6,000 to $10,000. So that was very, very exciting, and I appreciate that because Guam itself generally runs off of tourism and things like that. I never charge the kids. I never charge any of the kids in my camps. I never do. It's not that. We were able to sell some jerseys to some fans and stuff, like just some things some authentic stuff that they weren't able to get anywhere else or on eBay. So, and just based off the love and the hearts, I'm not saying everybody's poor on the island of Guam. There are some prominent families, and they were able to support. But from the Jewish community to go from that to $60,000 and to chip in, we are meeting, which is why I probably look so tired, not only because I'm working out, but we are meeting to create new plans and new structure, and it's exciting.
That's so great. I'm so happy to hear that. What a sort of bright outcome in very yeah, no, that's wonderful. I mean, have you you know, talked to other players about sort of their foundation or what, you know, working together on these things, or about your videos? It seems like they've gotten huge engagement, which is probably, you know, a part of why you're able to get momentum right now.
Yeah, I think definitely behind the scenes, a lot of players have reached out and felt that I did a very honorable thing. The issue with that, though, is, and again, we go back to the word hypocritical, is that we need to make sure we do that publicly.
Yeah.
That way, you know, and we'll move on from this. I don't want to harp on that. But, you know, Marquise Pouncey and his brother, Mike, the Pouncey twins throw an annual camp in Florida every year for their kids. And they have conversations with the police force in Lakeland and things like that. Al Villanueva contributes, my teammates contribute money to different organizations and things like that. Guys are willing and more than willing to help their own communities and others. Just some of the issues right now that we're dealing with is COVID-19. So how do we adjust from being able to go in the studio where we would usually do this to everything on the computer, right? So that's how we beat around that. So we're all kind of just like not only like obviously hoping for a season and getting ready for that, but everyone is thank you. Everyone is figuring out how we're gonna do this. And I really do not like hope. And I hope that I don't have to with all the Jewish women that I'm gonna be taking out on dates, I hope it's not gonna be over the computer. You know what I mean? I hope we'll be able
Listen, same. I'm hoping we need an end to COVID so that you can start, going to dinner, and we need an end to COVID so you can also play football. I have to say though, in terms of the studio, you've got some pretty, sports media appropriate art going on.
Thank you. Oh, you're talking about that right there. I
Yeah.
call that the humble pick. And shout out to the person right there. I made him humble that day. So now he gets to know that and feel honored that he's in my living room for the rest of his life. Thank you.
Wow, that is in painting form.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? It's brought to life.
Yeah.
Shout out to Cody, the one who painted it.
Shout out Cody. Yeah, no, that's great. We're gonna
have the Mona Lisa put right next to it, and then we're good.
just hang that in the Louvre. There you go.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for taking the time. I again, thank you for everything you're doing, and I'm psyched to see what you do next.
No problem, Charlotte. Thank you guys for having me.